Today was one for the wild salmon. The judge decided that salmon, whether they're in the farm or outside of the farm, are a wild fishery and should be regulated by the federal government. So fish farms are no longer really farms. They're another type of fishery, a culture fishery. This is so important because fisheries are important to our country, for our economics. They're very, very valuable, and this gives us a chance to start over and do something that makes real sense.
Okay, what kind of difference just decision makes for salmon industry?
When the provincial government is regulating salmon farms, they really only need to look inside the farm, and they argue that they're more like chickens than like fish. But with the federal government, now we're looking at the responsibility of the oceans and all the ocean fisheries. So everything that happens outside the pens around these farms are equally important, have to be taken into consideration with the regulations.
What rationale did the court use to decide that?
Maybe you could answer that better.
And you are?
I'm Greg Mcdade, the legal counsel. This was an important decision on constitutional law, but it wasn't a new legal principle. The judge relied on a number of major Supreme Court of Canada cases involving the fisheries back from the early 1900s and the late 1800s, where all these questions about who owns the fish and who regulates the fishery were to be decided. The fisheries is an exclusive federal jurisdiction, and so the judge just went back to those cases and found that this was a fishery. And this is also a very important case for the oceans and for public rights in the oceans. The judge decided that the province has no power to privatize the ocean. That's exclusively a parliamentary matter.
Alexandra, what does that mean now for the fish farms themselves that are in the Brian Gunn?
It means that their operations, the impact of their operations on the wild fish must be taken into greater account, and that they must fall under the Fisheries Act. So there's a lot of work to be done. This is really just the beginning of the next step, and it takes me back to where I was 18 years ago when I found problems with fish farms. I went to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada and asked them to deal with the industry, and now they will have to. And there's many wonderful biologists within DFO, and I'm quite confident that we can work out something that makes sense.
What does that mean now, though, as far as when does this start, what needs to happen, what's been the response of the provincial government? Have you called the lawyers, or have you talked to anyone there?
I have not talked to the provincial government yet. The judge gave 12 months to everybody to figure this out, and so we'll just have to wait and see. This is really just the beginning of the next process.
When you say figure it out, though, what does that mean?
Well, in Canada, you're not allowed to kill wild salmon without a permit and a license and a quota. And so any industry that is doing such has to come under some kind of control, because you're just simply not allowed to do that.
Okay.
How farm salmon affects wild salmon, and if situation will change, how it will change between wild and farm salmon?
The whole problem with farm salmon is they break some basic natural laws by holding salmon stationary in these huge populations. So diseases, whether it's bacteria or viruses or sea lice, get into these farms and multiply. And then they come out and they infect the wild fish at much too high a level for our fish to handle. There's a reason that wild salmon are nomads. And when you put them in a cage, you better close the door, because the pathogens that flow between the two populations will never, ever work out. It will constantly degrade the wild fish and the farm.